Spoilers for Silksong, but you should already know that. Since the dawn of mankind, people have been complaining about dying in Dark Souls.
Why am I toxic?
At this point, it's become a part of the human experience. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. After all, bitching and crying about any game can be incredibly fun and a calming experience.
Oh my god!
Difficulty is an aspect of gaming that is impossible to get right. There is no one gameplay setting that can accurately and assuredly give the player the perfect experience the developer intended. Because of the wide variance of skill, time, and resources if you consistently put holes through monitors from player to player. I think that's okay. In fact, I think that's what makes gaming such an enjoyable experience year after year, decade after decade. This fight is so cool! This fight is so fucking cool. No one experience is truly the same compared to another. Two people standing side by side could tell you they played Disco Elysium from start to finish, but either player's most valued experience can be completely different. I think the pigs was a really interesting encounter, says person 1. Her backstory was horrifying to me. She represented some of the darkest aspects of Revachol and the world of Elysium. Then person 2 pipes up. Communism. Strawman detected. Meme rejected. No one experiencing Silent Hill 2 for the first time all the way through comes away from it with the exact same interpretation. Sure, its linear story is all there, but what its environments and symbolism means to each person can be entirely different. Not everyone playing Hollow Knight Silksong had such a hard time with The Last Judge. That actually was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. But it doesn't nullify the experience of another player who might have struggled or is currently struggling. When we begin to delve into the world of critique and criticism, I think an important idea that most people forget to remember is that players having a hard time with Silksong does not nullify the design decisions of the developers. Hollow Knight Silksong is without a doubt a serious contender for Game of the Year. Its combat feels amazing, its world is gorgeous, and its gameplay as a Metroidvania is some of the greatest in the industry. Its breadth of content and high standard of quality is almost unfathomable to me. To think that a game like this, bursting with flavour and dripping with gorgeous artistry, could be made by just a couple people is seriously inspiring. I think it's something to be celebrated. Yet discussion on its difficulty I think has become a little unfair and pretty uncompelling. I feel that it's hard to tell when someone is just a little mad or if their complaints have serious merit. To even begin to question it though makes me look terrible, because it sounds like I'm undermining someone else's opinion because I don't like it, when in reality I just think they're unfounded. This sort of growing pain criticism about the game isn't unique to Silksong, and I honestly think that, upon reflection, critical analysis of its design a year or even a couple months from now should mostly change to a type of understanding that comes to appreciate its intricacies and difficulty, rather than to levy it as if it's a negative. Almost identical to how it was for Elden Ring, or Sekiro, or Dark Souls 3, or Bloodborne, or Demon's Subjects. To be crystal clear, I don't think the game should be completely immune to criticism because of its recency. Only that claims of its design and difficulty should be taken with a grain of salt, as I don't think a good chunk of the criticisms levied at this game are very fair, as they can be boiled down to players feeling frustrated with the game and then running to Twitter. Enemies doing double damage in the overworld is one of the most poignant points against the game right now. I think while there were moments where I thought early on that, wow, that's kind of brutal that enemies can take 2 entire masks of damage off you, as I explored more and became more acquainted with the game, it felt as if it was just another part of the world I was exploring. I felt that boss fights were a difficult but incredibly enjoyable challenge. I really loved Lace, Widow, Cogwork Dancers, and The Last Judge. They were such fun fights. But it felt like, especially early on, that people tended to struggle with bosses like Moorwing, The Last Judge, and the Beast Bugs. Because of that, I think they caught more criticism than I think they deserve-ish. These games are not intended to spite you, and they aren't intended to give you a heart attack. They are intended to provide you with a challenging experience that you have to learn to overcome. They don't achieve this by arbitrarily making everything do double damage and then expect you to just get good lol. They do it by increasing the brutality of its environments, by introducing new enemies with tougher attack patterns, as well as upping the damage that they do, and then provide you with the tools and skills that help mitigate that brutality. That's how Silksong and many other games like it manage to provide you with a significant challenge. Silksong gives you so many options to change and modify your skill set to your liking in ways that are so powerful and so varied that you shouldn't ever have to truly brute force any one aspect of the game. There are multiple crests you can find before you hit the last judge, and they are incredibly strong. Your movement is expanded far beyond what Hollow Knight provided, and in gameplay, it offers a very intricate precision to combat that not only gives you the opportunity for more skill expression, but also allows the designers to make these fights far tougher in an interesting way. For example, because of how much mobility you have as the player, bosses are now allowed to attack far faster and leave smaller windows of opportunity for counters. This creates a boss that rewards patience and precision. That's why I loved Widow so much. It was such a tough fight for me because of how I needed to push myself to learn all the small intricacies in Hornet's Dash. The power level that bosses are set to should not exceed your own power level design-wise. It should only go so far as to match it. The only difference between you and the boss that's keeping you from beating it are now the 3 resources that I mentioned earlier. Time, skill, and money! Although that's not really true, because now the game requires a third thing from you, and that's the correct mindset. If you're having problems with the amount of damage a boss does to you, you usually always have the ability to upgrade a kit in many different ways that can give you the edge over any boss you might find. If you get to the point where you're posting things like this on Reddit, then you probably aren't in the right mindset to be playing the game in the first place. More masks are helpful, although you don't get as much value from extra masks unless you have an even number of them. More ways to generate silk, or just more silk in general, is an incredible power that, in conjunction with more masks, can heavily increase your survivability. Items themselves have mitigating effects on different enemies as well. The Magma Bell reduces all damage taken from fire and lava attacks by 1 mask, an invaluable item that hard counters the last judge, giving you the opportunity to modify the way you fight an enemy that is most comfortable to you. That's why its skill floor is far higher than it was in Hollow Knight, because the game commensurately gives you the tools and the moveset to be able to comfortably meet and exceed that floor. Don't get it fucking twisted though. Criticizing Silksong is not off the table. I think that I'm a little sick of seeing arguments about the game that I feel are unfounded or uncompelling, because it sucks the air out of serious criticisms that the game should be forced to contend with. I felt that in these little challenge rooms you come by while exploring, I often had to put the game down and come back a little later because of how bored I was trying to get past it for the 18th time and then dying again. Which, to be clear, isn't a problem with enemies doing 2 damage, it's a problem with tons of enemies being thrown into one room all at once. I think a fairer criticism is to say that runbacks are a disrespectful waste of time to the player. Runbacks, as a pillar of design, are intended to punish the player for failure in a way that attempts to teach them a valuable lesson. If you lose your souls, for example, in a far-off, deep place in the High Wall of Lothric, you should have the ability to get back there and reclaim what you've already lost. If you can't, then you haven't learned anything from the mistakes you've made previously, therefore punishing careless or unprepared players for a mistake that they should have learned from. This is good game design. I believe that runbacks, in the context of boss fights, are disrespectful to the player's time, and I think there's very little to no reason for it from any game, FromSoft or not. These fights are tough, and it isn't expected you get it right on the first try. After all, it's a game of trial and error. Adding a minute-long runback only adds time to an already decently sized game that isn't necessary for its design. It gets especially egregious when runbacks are multiple minutes long, or if they contain enemies along the way, because even if the devs never intended it, it adds arbitrary difficulty to a fight. If you get clipped by an enemy, you have the choice to either waste another 30 seconds running back to heal up fully, or enter the boss fight with less than full HP. The game should respect the player's time and efforts. I think runbacks like this are pretty cut and dry case of the game disrespecting that player's time, because it doesn't serve any real purpose for the game's design. Cuphead lets you instantly retry a boss with the click of a button, allowing for 0 time wasted, which is why it was so easy to lose hours of time to it, because it didn't feel like there was a barrier to retrying. I think that difficulty is impossible to get perfect, but to ensure that both you, the player, and the developer achieve an experience that you can enjoy is to understand that the game is going to be tough and come to accept that. People don't jump into Darkest Dungeon and expect it to be easy. People don't jump into Baldur's Gate Honor Mode and expect it to be just another adventure. People don't jump into Deadlock and expect to understand everything after your first game. Whether you realise it or not, I believe the same should be expected of base game Silksong. The game will not coddle you, or let you turn your brain off. That's part of the game you signed up for. And I think to get the best experience from it, you must accept that and work with the game to enjoy something far more fulfilling than most of what's on the market today. You have a vast suite of options at your disposal to mitigate and improve your experience tenfold. If you put the time in by learning bosses, attaining crests, tools, items and masks, then you will enjoy the game. And you should. It's taken them the better part of a decade to finish.